Hello people, R1 here. Today I've got a subscriber replay turned in by Little Nasty on behalf of his squadron mate in the SAG Game Burger. Game Burger has a very good match. And what's really interesting about this match is what he's flying at the time. He's in the HE-112 A-0. It's a prototype that is interesting for its armament. It was an experimental version that was being tried out that sported a cannon in the nose, a single 20mm cannon. In fact, during this fight, all of the SAG members present are flying the exact same aircraft. At this stage in its development, it was still sporting an open canopy, and was really Germany's first attempt at developing a fighter that would fire a 20mm cannon through the engine block. And it worked well. The 20mm cannon was extremely precise. Although it was extremely limited on ammunition, it only had 150 rounds. And since this is a realistic battle, and there are no reloads, Game Burger is going to have to be very, very careful with how he times his shots. The aircraft had its first trial of fire by being part of the Condor Legion in the Spanish Civil War. And it did very well there, although because of its cannon it was assigned mainly to ground attack roles. Its pilot during most of this time was Oberlieutenant Wilhelm Balthasar. Now that's a great name. I need to remember that name. That's a classic. And Balthasar took this aircraft on its most famous and successful sortie. He attacked an armored train and managed to hit the ammunition car dead on, blowing the entire train to pieces. You see, people that criticize red tails, you see, it is possible. However unlikely it may be. And just to add insult to injury, on his way back with what remaining ammunition he had, he blew up a Republican tank. Unfortunately, a few months later, this prototype's engine jammed unexpectedly, and upon making a soft landing, well, it wasn't exactly a soft landing, it broke the aircraft in two. The pilot was fine, but the aircraft was toast. Still, it had a great deal of value and led to the next prototype in the line, and no doubt added valuable intelligence on the do's and don'ts of adding 20mm cannons to German aircraft. But that's enough about the plane. Right now, Game Burger is gaining altitude and looking for targets. So I'm going to cut forward just a little bit here until we get to the action. Now the HE-112 can be a bit tricky to fly in realistic combat. I've flown this plane many times myself, and it has a couple of things that you have to watch out for. Number one, it has a float-style carburetor, which means if you pull negative G's, it tends to cut out. That can be a problem, and you have to watch out for it. It also doesn't have war emergency power, or WEP, and that can hold you back a little bit. You have to be aware that you're not going to have that extra burst of speed when you want it. You have to govern your energy and speed very, very carefully. Now, some of the BF-109s in this match have already managed to gain significant altitude and are engaging a Hurricane Mark II up there. As Game Burger moves in, he's eyeing that conflict carefully, looking to see if he's going to need to intervene. The Hurricane dives past him, and he's going to cut in and swing around on its tail. One short, well-aimed burst later, and that Hurricane goes down. When your airplane is a little outclassed by everything else in the match, well, timing is everything. Now that Hurricane wasn't alone at altitude, and there are Spitfires circling overhead. Game Burger's going to have to keep a wary eye on them as he heads toward his next target that's at an altitude that he can successfully engage at. Attempting to go up after them at this point in time would merely lead to him stalling out and making himself an easy target. Well, there's an A-20G bomber out there that one of his squad mates peels off to go deal with, and that's going to be a difficult target to take down, armed as they are, but his squadron mate can handle it. He moves on toward the thick of the combat. There's a furball up ahead that's complicated by the fact that down below on the surface of the water, two enemy fleets are engaging each other. There's a lot of anti-aircraft fire from both sides coming up to make life difficult for the fighter pilots overhead. As he swings in on this particular fight, he maintains his speed as best he can, diving slightly to build up even more. Focuses in on his intended target and moves into attack. Now, the target he's chosen is fairly formidable. It's an American P-400. It's fast, can turn well, and it's heavily armed. But accompanied by his wingman, we're flying really close. He slots in on its tail. Fortunately, the cannon in the nose of his aircraft fires a bit slowly, and while that can be problematic in many situations, it does help ration his shots when trying to target an elusive aircraft like this one. There, he set it on fire. He's going in for the kill. Between him and some support fire from his wingman, the P-400 loses control and goes down. As he dives out, he takes some serious hits from anti-aircraft fire and perhaps some long-distance shots from an enemy fighter as well. He ducks down, skims the water, and struggles to regain some altitude while maintaining as much speed as he can. His engine's smoking, and he's going to have to be very, very careful now. Once clear of the AA, he'll swing her around and head back in toward the fight. His wingmen are still mixing it up over there, in the thick of everything, and they need his help. Little Nasty in particular is doing an outstanding job of keeping the enemy occupied so that Game Burger can recover and get back where he needs to be. Flak is still an issue, so Game Burger keeps it as low as he can until the time when he has to pop up to engage the next target. Little Nasty's in trouble up there, and Game Burger will move to finish off his opponent. Unfortunately, not in time to prevent Little Nasty from taking a critical hit himself, and we'll go into the fate of Little Nasty at the end of this video. He locks onto his next target, cuts in tight, and takes the wing clear off that Spitfire. That was a nice and difficult deflection shot. Very well executed. Game Burger is going to do what he can to exit the area underneath the anti-aircraft fire and assess the situation. Ahead of him, he sees yet another engagement. So he begins to gain altitude so that he can assist his teammates. It's another Spitfire, and he's going to slot in behind it. A friendly pilot on his team manages to take that Spitfire down without his assistance, but by way of compensation, one of Game Burger's teammates manages to take down that A-20G at right about the same time. And now Game Burger has a problem. There's a Spitfire dead ahead of him, and he's running low on ammunition. Now he does have a friendly teammate in the area, but there's also another enemy Spitfire near at hand. He's going to swing around, and being in a turn fight with a Spitfire is not exactly the best place you want to be, particularly when you're running out of ammunition. But he manages to horse the HE-112 around, and the Spitfire pilot makes the critical mistake of going for altitude and pulling over the top. Although he takes some hits from the other Spitfire as he does it, Game Burger manages to take the tail off of the enemy Spitfire, and down it goes. That will bring him up to 5 kills. But his plane is in really bad shape now. It's smoking heavily, and he's just about out of ammo. He's going to have to start evading. That other Spitfire is trying to get on his tail, and he has a teammate trying to get on the Spitfire's tail. He swings around. Some hits go in. The Spitfire climbs. Again, a mistake. And it explodes. Which is fortunate, because that just about has to have cost Game Burger very nearly the last of his ammunition. The last of the Spitfires is down, and not a moment too soon. And Game Burger is allowed to break free, take a deep breath, and congratulate himself on a job well done. This HE-112, armed as it is, doesn't have very many strengths, but a good pilot can leverage the ones that it does have. And it helps to have excellent teammates with you to help make that happen. Oh, but wait. I promised you a look at Little Nasty's fate. If you'll remember, the last time we saw Little Nasty, he was in the middle of a huge fight in the middle of the map, engaging multiple Spitfires. He will manage to somehow get on the tail of one of the Spitfires, as another one gets on his tail in turn. He knows he has help on the way, and he's just trying to hold out and take at least one of these guys with him. He's managed to do a fair amount of damage and is running these boys ragged. He'll manage to swing it around and get directly behind his intended target, and his 20 mil chews the tail off of the Spitfire. It's criticaled. It would go down, but Game Burger's going to end up finishing that one off before it can do any more harm. Little Nasty, unfortunately, takes a critical hit right through the engine. His engine's dying. There's a friendly base and airstrip directly in front of him that still hasn't fallen, so he really has little choice, and he decides to set it down. Now, his odds of successfully doing that are pretty slim. He's going way too fast, and he has no power for control. So he slams on the runway, stands it almost on its nose on more than one occasion, frantically braking, and it almost goes over. But he holds it together somehow, skidding toward the end of this extremely short runway. Otherwise, he'd go off the cliff and into the water at the end. Spins her around and finally comes to a stop. Unfortunately, this particular base is under bombardment. And it is by far not the safest place he could have ended up. If you've ever wondered what it's like to be on the receiving end of a naval bombardment, well, this is what it's like. Not a place where you really want to be. That's the match. Thanks for the replay, Game Burger. It was excellent, and hats off to the whole of the SAG. And until I see you folks again, good hunting.